August 25th, 2015, the day I uploaded my first review of the original Sonic the Hedgehog game. I was only 15 years old and hadn't even started my sophomore year of high school. It was a simpler time. I didn't have too many priorities or expenses, I had a lot of free time with my friends, and I had an actual upload schedule. It truly was a different time. I would then review the next couple of Sonic games with my friends and family, but after that, things started to get crowded. I had more extracurricular activities, a job, more studies I had to attend to, and on top of that, I had to apply to college. I got into my school of choice, which was a great relief, but things were changing rapidly. I had to say goodbye to many close friends, move downtown, and learn the basics of film production. Things certainly changed, but for the better, I'd say. I made new friends, kept in contact with my old ones, and I was lucky enough to be part of 15 productions in my time as a college student. Needless to say, I'm happy, but I look back at those old videos and I think back on those simpler times and I ask myself one question. How have I grown as a person? I'm 20 years old and I have a beard. If that's not progress, I don't know what is.
Hey Sean, it's your old pal Dictionary.com. We've called to let you know that the definition of progress is not that.
Damn it! Yeah. I'm back. Wow, it's been about a year since I've done a game review of some variety. College will do that stuff to you. Yeah, it's the main reason why me, Mo, and JT haven't really done videos in a while. School, again, that takes up a lot of time in our schedules, and just on top of that, like, the current state of the world, and especially the country right now, so, yeah, that's definitely take up a lot of our priorities and whatnot. I feel for the sake of like my own creativity, it's best that I stick to doing videos I actually want to do right now, as opposed to doing like a review out of, say, like a previous obligation, which was kind of my big problem I had when doing the God of War review. I actually had most of it recorded and pretty much ready to go, and like the whole skeleton of the video was done in editing, but I don't know, to me it just didn't feel like me at my best. It honestly felt more like an obligation rather than something I actually wanted to talk about. The reason I'm going back to these games is because during my time in quarantine, I've actually had a chance to replay through all the games again, and surprisingly, my thoughts on them have actually changed a lot more than I thought they would have. I have not fully played through these games since I was 15, and that's so weird to say out loud. These games are kind of what helped shape me as a content creator, and considering how much I feel I've changed over the past 5 years, I don't know, I think it's only fair that I give these games a more thorough retrospective. So with that said, Sonic 1, the game that started the anarchy. This was the brainchild of one Naoto Oshima and Yuji Naka, two programmers who worked at Sega at the time. Oshima was the artist responsible for Sonic & Co.'s final design, with Naka being in charge of the coding and programming side of things. So while Yuji Naka is often credited as the godfather of the Sonic series, Naoto Oshima is the one we can thank for giving Sonic his iconic look. I don't really think enough people talk about how creative Sonic's design is from an art design standpoint. His round posture makes him appear fun and playful, but the spikes on the back of his head definitely add an extra edge to him. Sonic's personality was also inspired by many different figures in the 90s, like Michael Jackson and Bill Clinton. Oh, I'm sure that ages well. Alright, Jackson I could sort of understand for the sake of giving Sonic a showman-like attitude, but Bill Clinton? I mean, I guess it's a sign he has a casual attitude, but it still feels like a weird source of inspiration. But good thing they stopped at that. The last thing we need in a Sonic the Hedgehog game are saxophones, cigars, and sexual harassment. I love kids' games. But once everything was in place, the game finally came out in 1991 on the Sega Genesis to widespread commercial success. This game was the reason why people bought a Sega Genesis outside of the graphics. The game's influence was that powerful. I should know. Look at me. I'm a f***ing madman. And from there, the rest is history. Sonic had become a massive icon in gaming. Until he had a downward spiral in the mid-2000s, got his life back together for a few years just to have a relapse, and then emerge as a movie star. Oh, that classic story. But those games are a discussion for another time. As for right now, we're going to take a look back at the glory days of Sonic the Hedgehog and see just how his conception led us to this point. So with that said, let's take a look. So the plot of Sonic 1. Dr. Robotnik wants to take over the world. That f***ing bastard! He is enslaving animals to use as a power source for his robots, i.e. a souped-up version of hamster power. And with Sonic being the thrill-seeker that he is, he looks to stop the menace of Robotnik and restore peace to his home. Yeah, it's a pretty simple story for a video game, but there are a few select details that help make the game's journey feel a bit more fulfilling. The detail about Robotnik putting animals in his robots actually plays out in the game, as a random animal will pop out whenever one is destroyed. That and the end goal of each stage is to destroy a capsule that contains these animals. Also, another neat detail is how Robotnik is actually the only boss you fight in the game, as he appears at the end of each stage in a different contraption. And for the time, that's actually really unique, as other games would save the big bad guy for the end. So I think it's actually kind of cool that you fight him so many times in the game. It kind of gives a more personal reason for the player to want to stop him, and kind of helps build the rivalry between Sonic and Robotnik. Overall, I feel the story works for this sort of game. It's not super serious, but there's enough of a threat and drive that it actually makes you want to play all the way to the end. Which is exactly what a video game story should strive to do, so A+ on that part. But enough about the story, we've got to move on to the gameplay. And considering how this game is all about speed, I cannot wait to go through some wicked fast levels that I can absolutely blast through. I'm not going to say false advertising. So, Sonic 1 has a bit of a pacing problem. It seems that for every time you try to go fast in this game, there's something that always seems to slow you down to the point where it feels like someone in development was trying to actively fuck with you. Sonic does move relatively fast in this game, but his top speed is capped while running, with the only way to pick up more speed is by crawling into a ball and rolling down a hill. You can get speed shoes to run significantly faster, but the fact that you can't go faster than programmed by default just kinda makes the flow of the game's controls a little weird. You only have one button to press, which is jump, and while that sounds simple, a lot of the game's complexity comes from Sonic's movement. Momentum is a big aspect in this game. If you want to go fast, you've got to earn it by rolling down hills and going through loops. This balance of maintaining speed while also not getting hit is what makes the controls so important in this game. It's not a matter of hitting a button and zooming across the stage. You need to play the game by its rules, and when you do, it is so satisfying to be able to blast through a stage like it's nothing. But man, do the stages not help with that! Yes, while the controls encourage fast movement and timing, the level design doesn't really give you a chance to go very fast at all. It hurts all the more because Green Hill Zone, the first stage in the game, is fantastic. There are tons of loops and slopes for you to roll through, plenty of power-ups to find. Yeah, it's not a very long stage, but it sets the tone and pace that you would expect the game to follow. And then Marble Zone shows up and acts as a literal brick wall. It's not bad, but for the second stage, it's way too much of a change in pace and an even worse spike in difficulty. This stage can be pretty hard, with there being spikes, crushers, spikes on crushers, just in case we didn't notice, lava, and a whole lot of waiting. It just kind of makes me wonder why this, of all choices, was the second stage. If anything, it seems like it'd be a decent part for the middle of the game, but I guess Sonic Team was a really big fan of brick walls. Spring Yard Zone, now this is more like it. It's not the fastest stage in the game, but it does have some fun areas for you to roll downhill, pick up some speed, and these sections where you have to roll back and forth are neat. Well, that's nice, we got a faster stage. Man, if the rest of the game's gonna go like this, it's gonna be an absolute blast! Damn it! Labyrinth Zone needs to go lay down. If you thought Marble Zone was bad, this is like a brick wall with water. There's nothing fast about this stage, it's super blocky and bland, it goes on forever, and it gives me anxiety. This stage really makes me wonder on why Sonic Team would try to make a character focused on going fast, only to give him a level where he can't do that at all, and at that, it just kinda makes rooting for Sonic that much harder. How can he expect to defeat Robotnik? He can't even fucking swim. Starlight Zone, a vast improvement over the last one. This is a nice and cozy stage to play, and it's set at night too. How can it go wrong? Oh yeah, death. Scrap Brain Zone caps us off, and by now I'm pretty sure you should have noticed the level pattern so far of fun level, kill me, fun level, oh please kill me, and fun level. The stage keeps killing me! Now, in all fairness, I'll say that Scrap Brain has the excuse of it being the final level. It's supposed to be a bit slower and more difficult. It's not really that fun of a stage, but it keeps the pace pretty consistent, which is nice, and it doesn't really throw any surprises at you. Oh, Act 3 is Labyrinth Zone. Don't worry, everybody, I've sounded the alarms. The bosses in this game are pretty good, but they're all kind of cut from the same cloth. Just hit Robotnik 8 times and bam, you're good. But they all have their own little unique gimmicks for you to figure out and beat, which keeps them pretty interesting. Except Labyrinth Zone, where you have to follow Robotnik through a series of spikes and turrets. Again, a brick wall with water can never be trusted. Now, that may be it for the main stages, but we can't forget about the special stages. You see, whenever you beat a stage with 50 plus rings, you can jump into a giant ring and get a chance to collect something called a Chaos Emerald. Get all 6 and you get a better ending, and if these stages are any good, well, then I have to go after them. Yeah, these special stages kinda suck. I mean, it's not terrible, but these aren't really that much fun either. You just go through a maze of blocks and circles to find the Chaos Emeralds, which sounds simple, but it is so easy to lose at these. You will fall through these exits constantly, and navigating through these on your first playthrough is gonna be a little confusing. But my biggest problem with these stages is that you really only get so many attempts to nab these, as you can only get them in the first 2 acts of a stage. And if you don't get at least 2 by Starlight Zone, you can't get the good ending. Now, getting 50 rings isn't that hard, and it shouldn't be that much harder to hold on to them, right? Jesus Christ! Also, the good ending really isn't that different. You save the day in both, but the good ending just has you use the Chaos Emeralds to grow plants. Why would you do that? That seems like a really big waste of their power. Just grow them with water! I don't know how to feel about this game. I mean, it's fine, but man, did I forget there were a lot of issues here. The game does control well, but for a first-party platformer in the 90s, that's not really a huge milestone. And even then, the control doesn't really matter when the level design doesn't complement it. And that's my biggest problem with this game, the levels. Outside of Green Hill, I don't really like any of these stages. Whether it's because they're too slow, have annoying enemy placement, or just Labyrinth Zone, I don't find myself having a great time playing this game anymore. I can't bring myself to say the game is bad because I could see a lot of effort and passion went into it, from the graphics, which still hold up pretty well, and the music. That is something you could always expect to be good from a Sonic game. The level tracks are great. They range from fun and bouncy to upbeat and jazzy to dark and sinister. These elements clearly display great talent. But I feel it's misguided by a lack of direction. And saying that out loud, that kind of says a lot about the series. Now, I still have a soft spot for this game. It was the first one I owned when I got my Sega Genesis. I remember my cousins and I went to this retro game store when we were young, and we were in awe by the sheer history behind this thing. It will always have value for me in that aspect, but I wouldn't play this one first. It's a fine game, but not a great starting point. Now, I don't want to be too negative when looking at these games, since, so many people are already. I want to be honest, and I gotta say, that brick wall hurts. But this is a classic Sonic retrospective. If I were to move on, I would need a game that continues the story, adds upon the foundation of the first game, and basically improves upon the series in every single way possible. Have this game in my hand. So Sonic won, and, well, it sure happened. While being a decent game, it was still riddled with design problems that just kind of makes it a chore to play nowadays. There was really nowhere to go but up after this game, and, well, up they sure went. Sonic 2, released in 1992 on November 21st, which is also on a Tuesday, which was also dubbed Sonic Tuesday. And it also came launched with the Sega Genesis Model 2. I would complain about how many 2s are associated with this game, but I really have no room to talk considering my birthday. Once it launched, it was a mega hit, selling over 6 million copies on the Sega Genesis alone, and with subsequent re-releases makes it one of the top-selling games in the entire series. I do remember enjoying it when I first played it for the channel, but upon replaying it, I forgot how much I really love this game. Slight spoilers, but Sonic 2 is what I call a sequel done right. It improves on so much from the first game, and it ushered in so many design philosophies that are still used in the series to this day. For a while, this was the highest selling Sonic game of all time, and then Sega decided to put the first game on everything, and then suddenly this happens. It's fun looking at the sales figures for this series and seeing just how much I hate them. Like, the mobile game Sonic Dash sold more than Sonic 2 and 3. That's disgusting. So after the release of Sonic 1, there was a bit of a dispute between the series creators Yuji Naka and Naoto Oshima as to what direction the series should be taken in. Naka would leave for a short while until he decided to return to Sega's American studio, Sega Technical Institute, or STI for short. Don't worry, I came prepared. Naka would bring about half the developers from Sonic Team with him to develop Sonic 2, while Oshima and the rest of the team kept working on another game in Japan, that being Sonic CD. So with all that set in motion, the game would eventually come out on the Sega Genesis about a year later, and, well, here we are. So with all that being said, let's check out the game. This is Sonic 2. So the plot of Sonic 2. Dr. Robotnik wants to take over the world. What's that? Second verse, same as the first. Yeah, the plot is pretty much the same as last time in that we are a hedgehog fighting obesity, natural enemies. There are a few things that help elevate the stakes and add some depth to the game. The first being Sonic's 8-year-old companion Tails, and in saying that out loud, why is Sonic hanging out with an 8-year-old boy? Tails' creation actually came from Yuji Naka and wanted to implement multiplayer into the game, as he wanted to give the second player someone unique to control. The age, I'd imagine, came from the idea that most people would be playing with their younger siblings, and the whole big brother, little brother dynamic is something that would be fleshed out in later games, but here it's more for gameplay reasons. The only reason I could see as to why the developers would give him two Tails is to justify how he can catch up with Sonic in the stages, and also to mark the fact that, yep, this game is a sequel, alright, that too doesn't lie. So as far as how the game plays this time, it may seem very similar to the first game. You are Sonic, and you're going fast. Thank God. Yeah, from a glance it may look like it plays the same, but once you actually sit down and play it, Oh my god, this is way more fun. So first off, Sonic no longer has a speed cap in this game. I will just put the original in its place. You could go much faster in this game by running. You don't have to worry about finding a slope to roll down or getting a running start to go up an incline. But let's say you want to get speed at a standstill. Well, say hello to the spin dash, aka the best thing discovered since fire. By crouching and hitting the jump button, Sonic will rev up in place, and then when you let go, you go super fast. This is such an integral part of the game, and it adds so many opportunities to explore the levels, despite it being so simple to pull off. You could play the game without using the spin dash, but I'm pretty sure that's how you get on the list in most states. And it's so much fun to use that it really doesn't make any sense as to why you wouldn't want to. The only thing I don't get is what exactly Sonic is doing here. I don't quite know how someone can roll in place like that. Like, my buddy Dylan tried it once and it didn't really work out for him. The controls are so fine-tuned, it just feels so good to play, but it's not overly complicated to the point where the player feels overwhelmed. It's very easy to pick up and play, and despite that simplicity, more people still bought Sonic Dash. Damn it! Now, the improved controls are one thing, but the levels? Oh my god, the levels are so good in this game! I have to hand it to Naka and his team. They really hit it out of the park with these stages. It's as if they played the first game and said, hey, I only like the stages where I actually had fun, and made a game about that. To start things off, we have Emerald Hill Zone, which feels like a natural evolution to Sonic 1's Green Hill Zone. This is a fun stage. It has a ton of secrets and pathways, and the music just evokes this feeling of starting an adventure. I love it. This is nice. One thing that was changed is that all the stages now have 2 acts instead of 3, which I think is a welcome change. I'm not super against the idea of having 3 acts in a stage, but this helps keep the pace quick and fun. The second stage is Chemical Plant, and unlike Marble Zone in the first game, this stage is actually fun to play through. Oh, looks like you're gonna be here a little longer. This stage is awesome. It's such a blast to play through, the music is really bopping, the industrial factory look is really badass. Whenever people think of Sonic 2, this is usually the first stage that they'll think of. Next up, we've got Aquatic Ruins. This is a very relaxing stage. It's a water level, but there's enough areas up top to keep your speed going, and if you're skilled enough, players can avoid the water entirely. I'm not that skilled. Casino Night, one of the more popular stages in the game. It's an alright level, but it's not really one that I really have the urge to replay. I feel like this stage doesn't really have enough fun areas for you to go fast, and while the pinball areas are pretty fun to go through, they do take up a lot of the stage. Hilltop Zone. Gotta be honest, I only remember this stage because the music track has a harmonica in it. I'm usually not a fan of countryside-based locations in games, but if they have a harmonica in it, I'm all for it. Hilltop Zone, you get a pass. Mystic Cave. Sure. Oil Ocean Zone. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of this stage. Something about the way it's designed just kinda seems annoying and clunky. And the enemies have a really bad case of blindsiding you. I'll allow it this once, but they better not do it again. I shouldn't have said anything. Metropolis Zone, technically the final official stage in the game, and it's also my least favorite. It feels like everything this game did right so far was just completely chucked out the window when designing this level. You don't really go that fast, at least not consistently, as most of it's just tedious platforming challenges, and the enemy placement reeks here. There are only 3 different kinds of enemies, and every time I face them, I have to rethink my existence for a little bit. Asterons will ambush you constantly in these vertical areas, shellcrackers are often placed under a low ceiling, which makes it very difficult to kill them, and slicers are just really annoying since they have a tendency to blindside you. And to top it all off, this stage just goes on forever. It doesn't help that you'll end up dying a whole lot, but this is the only stage that have 3 acts instead of 2. Okay, let's make some room. Sky Chase is pretty interesting since you're controlling Tails' plane, but you're also controlling Sonic as he rides on top of the plane, and it just kind of comes out to be a clunky mess to control. I think the footage speaks for itself here. Like, does this look fun? Does it? Wing Fortress, fuck my anxiety. This stage is so tense, it feels like every second you're gonna fall off and die. Like, look at this right here. I swear, every time I'm here, it feels like I'm gonna miss. And guess what? I make it, but it's no less nerve-wracking. Finally, we end things off with the Death Egg Zone, and there are no rings here. I'm nervous. This stage houses the last 2 bosses in the game, the first being Silver Sonic, who honestly isn't that hard once you get his pattern down. But then we go up against Robotnik and his brand new machine, the Death Egg Robot. Fuck this thing. This is the only part of the game that I would consider to be legitimately unfair, as the lack of rings means you have to do this whole stage without getting hit once. And trying to beat this thing is an absolute train wreck. Something about his hit detection just seems a little off here. It feels like whenever I hit him, I should bounce back, but instead I just phase right through him. Okay, you're free to go. Once you beat him, we get treated to this game's ending, and oh, I love this ending. Something about the way it's paced, the still images acting almost like storyboard cutscenes, Tails flying up to save Sonic, and the music, it's just so beautiful. Honestly, this is one of my favorite endings in the game. It's just absolutely perfect. Until you get the Chaos Emeralds. Yes, once again, these mystical gemstones are back, with there being 7 emeralds now instead of 6. The way you get them this time has been made much easier, as you do it by crossing a checkpoint with 50 rings and jumping into the star it emits. And then... well, look who got their act together. Yes, the special stages return, this time as a half pipe where you have to run through and collect as many rings as possible. Sounds simple, easy, and even fun. Yeah, I don't like these stages either. Something about Sonic's control here, it feels a bit too slippery for my liking, and it's difficult to see the rings as they approach you. Granted, I do like these way more than the special stages in the first game, but they still aren't really that much fun to play, and the later ones can get stupidly difficult. I'll be honest, whenever I play this game, I never really go after the emeralds. Now, you do get something for collecting all the emeralds, as it allows you to transform into Super Sonic. Who needs eyesight anyway? This golden beast turns you invincible, you jump twice as high and you move twice as fast, so you are essentially on crack. Now, while he is fun to play as, God is he not worth it trying to go through all that hell just to get something that, let's be honest, kind of breaks the game. But to be honest, my main reason for never going after Super Sonic is because when you do, the ending changes from Tails saving you to you flying next to Tails, which I feel kind of goes against the dynamic these two characters have. The idea that these two have each other's backs even in the worst of times. And this basically just says, nah, I'm good. I'm just gonna fly. I know that some people actually do have a pretty easy time getting all the emeralds, but I'm not one of them. I've never really been good at these special stages. I personally think you get more than enough enjoyment just by playing the game normally. So that was Sonic 2, and is it the best classic Sonic game of all time? Yeah. Like I said, this game really surprised me with how much I still enjoyed it all these years later. The tweaks to the controls make it a dream to play, the levels are so much fun compared to the first game, the graphics and music are great. It's honestly just a really solid time. While the first game may have created the series, I think most can agree that the series really started here. I absolutely recommend you play it, and it's available on lots of consoles, Steam, the Switch eShop, Sega Classics Collection, but I'd honestly recommend the mobile phone version of this game. I know, of all versions, why this one? Well, this port was created by Christian Whitehead, who also redid Sonic 1 and CD for mobile, and these versions are fantastic. They add things like a save feature, the ability to spin dash in Sonic 1, and Tails has the ability to fly when you play as him in Sonic 2. Along with that, there was also some cut content that was re-implemented back into the game, like Hidden Palace Zone, a stage you were supposed to get by collecting all the emeralds. These are just really fantastic versions. I'd say for maximum enjoyment, you should probably get a Bluetooth controller, but the touch controls actually work pretty well on their own. Sonic 2 is still a blast to play and a great starting point for any newcomer to get into the series. Now, even though it was one of the top selling games on the Sega Genesis, the first game did outsell it by quite a decent amount, which, makes sense. It was heavily advertised a lot, and it came bundled with a bunch of Genesis systems. And through the subsequent re-releases that came out throughout the years, it had no problem selling twice as many copies as Sonic Dash. Ha! Take that! So Sonic 2 was a monumental release for Sega in the early 90s, with it selling over 6 million copies on the Genesis alone. Things could not have been better for Sega at this point in time, as they were in pretty steady competition with Nintendo and are actually outselling the SNES at a time. With the second model of the Genesis being sold at a lower price and usually come bundled with Sonic 2, units were flying off the shelves. As both companies were approaching the mid-90s and therefore approaching the next generation in gaming, they were looking for ways to uproot each other and get a few steps forward in the competition. Nintendo was quickly gaining speed and selling more consoles, with them focusing on their exclusive games and revamp the ad campaign. So a lot of pressure was on Sega to up their game and to give people a reason to side with them over Nintendo. Now, before I continue talking about Sega's plans for the future, excuse me, I've got to take out the garbage. Well, that explains a lot. Yeah, Sega was having a bit of a hard time at this point. I wouldn't say they had gone downhill yet, but they were definitely starting to slip. In an attempt to gather more consumers for the Genesis, Sega began releasing accessories and add-ons for the system. And with that, we are introduced to the Sega CD, an attachment for the Genesis that allowed you to play CD-based games instead of cartridges. Now, this wasn't a bad idea by any means. CDs could hold more data, they were cheaper to manufacture, and you could play fetch with them. It was perfect. But Sega didn't really use it in any unique way. Many of the games either already had versions of it on the Genesis or were too focused on being these interactive movie-type games. Despite being looked at in a negative light, the Sega CD wasn't really that bad. It did sell over 2 million units, which for an add-on for a console, I think that's pretty okay. But it did have one game that everyone had always held in high regard, and that is Sonic CD. For years, this was seen as that elusive gem in the series, the one that not many people got to play, but those who have claimed it to be the best Sonic game of all time. With Sonic 2 being developed in America with Yuji Naka and his team, CD was being developed back in Japan under the direction of Naoto Oshima. His involvement does seem very strong in this game, as the art design definitely sticks out the most, and the overall game feels a bit closer to how Sonic 1 was made. Joy. Despite being on a separate system, Sonic CD sold pretty damn well in context of the console, as it sold about 1.5 million copies. With exception to a pretty rare PC release, Sonic CD would only remain on the Sega CD for years until it was finally re-released as a part of the Sonic Gems collection back in 2005. Yeah, I know, it's wild to think that this was the first time the game had ever seen a re-release outside of the Sega CD. The version I'll be looking at is the 2011 re-release of the game on Xbox Live Arcade, PlayStation Network, mobile, and Steam. Interestingly enough, this version would be made by Christian Whitehead, who would end up remaking Sonic 1 and 2 on mobile, and eventually would be the lead designer on Sonic Mania. While I usually do try to play the original versions of the classic Sonic games, I sadly don't own the Sega CD version. I personally don't feel like breaking out the version on Gems Collection. Plus, the new version is in widescreen, has a smoother frame rate, and is just overall easier for me to record. So what makes this game so special to so many people who have played it? Well, I guess it's time we find out. This is Sonic CD. I mean, this is Gems Collection. CD is on my computer. I can't hold up a box for a computer game because it's a digital file. Unless I punch through the screen. So to go over the plot, Dr. Robotnik has chained a planet to the ground. And wants to take over the world. Oh, thank God. He's in the process of roboticizing the planet to act as a massive power station to build his empire. And on top of that, he's using these 7 time stones to go back in time and place robot generators in the past. Okay, we're 3 games in and we're already doing time travel. Oh, I can see this being good later on. Okay, in all seriousness, the time travel really doesn't play a big part in the game's story. It's more just used for gameplay purposes, which I'll get into in a second. Now that's all fun and cool, but the cool thing is that for once we actually have that all established to us via an animated opening courtesy of Toei Animation. This to me encapsulates what classic Sonic is supposed to be, adventurous and determined with a bit of fun and cockiness, and all of that is displayed in this opening. It's so fluent and gorgeous, the colors pop so well, and just look at how much it moves. This opening is fantastic. Which kind of makes it all the worse knowing that it was completely butchered when brought to the Sega CD. I mean, look at how choppy and pixelated it is. None of the flow and detail comes through here at all. This is a showcase of art. This is someone doing their PowerPoint presentation the night before it's due. But let's not pretend the HD version does it any better though. As you can see, the original displayed like this, and now... Oh God. Why would they stretch it out like this? It just looks... wrong. The Sega CD wasn't very powerful, so I can at least give it some leeway there, but this is just inexcusable. I don't think anyone would have complained if they displayed the cutscene normally. And it's just kind of weird to me since this version adds so much to the game and tries to make it as faithful and great as possible, and yet for some reason they messed this up. On top of the animated intro, we also get 2 new characters introduced to the series. The first being Amy Rose, who only appears in 3 stages. Okay. Has a massive crush on Sonic. Why? And the only thing she can do is give you a hug. You know, I could use one. Then we have Metal Sonic, created by Dr. Robotnik to defeat the regular Sonic. Now this to me is a rival character done right. It's the complete antithesis of Sonic personality-wise, but in terms of abilities, they're very similar. Extremely fast, extremely nimble, and extremely powerful. The difference is, while Sonic is extremely fun and playful, Metal Sonic is just cold and silent and only has one goal in mind: be the real Sonic. That, and I really like his design and how it's a bit more menacing than some of the other robots in the game. Now on to the game itself, and upon looking at it, yep, that is Sonic alright. You go fast, get rings, and kill robots. Controls are pretty much the same as last time. We can run, jump, and roll. The spin dash is back, and it's a little thing I like to call worse. For some reason, the spin dash in the original run of this game had to be revved up before you could actually use it, which is lame. It completely kills the flow so much here. Now granted, it was probably done that way to highlight a new move Sonic can do in this game called the Super Peel Out. This time by holding up and pressing the jump button, Sonic's feet turn into a figure 8 and then you blast off at top speed. On paper, this move is totally fine. It's another way to get speed really quickly. In practice, yes it works, but you're completely vulnerable when you use it. It's not like the spin dash that can destroy enemies. If you run into them like this, you'll still get hit. So on one end, we have a move that does damage but is slow to use, and on the other, we have a move that's super fast and can get me killed. It's like trying to eat soup with a knife. Thankfully, the HD version gives you the option to switch to the more traditional spin dash, which is a godsend, and hands down the reason why this version is automatically better. Now on to the levels, and well, it looks like someone had a field day here. Sonic CD is super colorful. They wanted to push what the Sega CD could do, and well, they definitely succeeded. Every stage is filled to the brim with color and detail, which is both a blessing and a curse. While the game is visually very distinct, it's also kind of hard to make out what exactly is going on in the levels. Nothing really stands out between a lot of the stages outside of the fact that this one has a lot of pink, and this one has a lot of gold, or this one gives me a seizure. It feels like the art director for this game was like,
okay everybody, here's my pitch for Sonic CD. It worked for Marvel.
Now, two big aspects about this game are the collectibles and time travel. Every stage has 3 different variations, past, present, and future, and they each have their own set gimmicks. The past is generally more pleasant and has less enemies, and the future is a lot darker and more dangerous. One of the methods of getting this game's good ending is by going to the past in each level and destroying a robot generator in every stage. Finding the robot generator in and of itself is not super difficult. Getting to the past, however, is a different story. The way you do it is by passing one of these signs that says past or future on them, and by running fast after a while will allow you to travel to that time. Now, in all honesty, I think this is actually a really good idea. Sonic's all about speed, and what do you do with the main gimmick of the game? You have it revolve around him going fast. That is a really good idea. So why did it have to be with these levels? The stages aren't designed coherently at all. Only a couple of them are designed as straightforward levels where you're meant to speed through them. Most of the stages, on the other hand, were designed with a bit more of a vertical layout, which encourages you to explore the levels in their entirety. A novel concept to be sure, but it's completely ruined by the time travel gimmick in this game. Considering that levels are mostly vertical, speed is almost completely an afterthought, and whenever you do go fast, it never feels like you're the one in control of it. And when the stages aren't designed with you going fast in mind, well, so much for time traveling. Now, there are certain sections of a stage that will give you either a long path for you to follow or 2 springs to bounce back and forth on, which makes time traveling a non-issue, but most of the stages don't have this, so getting the good ending via time travel is just the absolute worst. I never go after the robot generators for this reason alone. Now, there is another way to get the good ending, and in my opinion, it's the much preferred method. It's very similar to how Sonic 1 did it. Collect 50 rings, and at the end of the stage, you'll jump into a giant ring, which takes you to a special stage. And these are weird. You're in a pseudo 3D area in which you have to destroy a bunch of UFOs. Even with a concept as ridiculous as Sonic, this is kind of pushing it, in my opinion. The stages themselves, I mean, they're not bad. I do remember them being kind of a chore in the original version, but here it runs really smoothly and controls pretty well too. Well, I guess that's 1 point for this game over the first 2, just don't tell it the total score. Now, as far as the stages go, okay, this is a bit tricky. Most of the stages kind of feel like regular Sonic 1 levels, but they have one unique gimmick in each one that kind of makes it a pain in the ass to deal with. So much so to the point where it could be summed up in bullet points. Palm Tree Panic, it's green and kind of 3D. Collision Chaos, it's pink, bouncy, and where the game's true colors start to show. Tidal Tempest, Hydrophobia. Quartz Quadrant, Conveyor Belt. Wacky Workbench, a trampoline that I'm not on, therefore I hate it. Stardust Speedway, a fun race with Metal Sonic, but it makes me greedy with all this gold. Metallic Madness, it's basically Scrap Brain again, but you become tiny and cute, therefore it is better. And that's pretty much as far as how I feel about the levels. The fact that I summed them all up in a quick paragraph really highlights my biggest problem with this game, and it's something shared with Sonic 1. I don't really like any of the levels. I don't really dislike any of them either, but nothing stands out about them to me. There's really no memorable set pieces, no really unique look. These don't feel like locations in a world, it feels like a magic eye painting. It's a hedgehog. The fact that you can travel through time is interesting, but when the stages aren't identifiable at all, the alternate versions don't really stand out as much. This concept, however, is not bad by any means. Imagine if it was used in the other games, a dark future version of Green Hill Zone, or a past version of Chemical Plant when it was still under construction. That would be amazing. But whenever a new idea is used in this game, it feels like it's overused to the point where it feels more like a gimmick. Now, in all fairness, some of the new ideas do really work. For example, I really dig the bosses, where instead of landing 8 hits and calling it a day, most of them actually require you to break down Robotnik's defenses just to get 1 hit on him. I actually really like that idea. It's not super in-depth, but it does add a new type of strategy to the game. The bosses, to me, are probably the biggest highlight and showed probably the most creativity gameplay-wise. But that's kind of a problem when it's just the bosses and not for the entirety of the game. So that was Sonic CD. Yeah, I don't know how to feel about this game either. Technically, it's fine. I don't think there are any serious problems with the game, but I really can't bring myself to say it's that good either. I like a lot of the new ideas it brings, the way time travel works makes a lot of sense, the new characters are a nice addition, and the animated cutscenes are an absolutely gorgeous sight to behold. But similar to the first game, it feels like a lot of decent ideas that weren't followed all the way through or just weren't implemented well at all. The levels just aren't super interesting to play through. The graphics, while colorful and detailed, are also super cluttered and kind of busy, which in a lot of ways kind of makes each section of this game feel less unique. Honestly, a lot of this just feels like a lot of weird experiments that should have been left at that. I don't hate this game, there are a lot of good qualities, one of them of course being the soundtrack. Sonic CD actually had 2 soundtracks upon its release, one for America and one for Japan, with both being available in the HD version, and it's all really great stuff. I especially love Quartz Quadrant's Japanese theme. Overall, I feel the game really is just going to depend on how players feel about it. I've seen many people label this as one of the best Sonic games in existence. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I can understand why people like it as much as they do. It's a very different and unique classic Sonic game, which I imagine would resonate a lot with a bunch of different people. It's just not for me personally. I'd say it is worth checking out and forming your own opinion on it though. If you were to play any version of this game at all, then get the HD version. Again, all the quality of life improvements are awesome, it's more readily available, it's really cheap to get, the new soundtracks are really great, and also it adds a playable Tails who can fly around and give these stages a new type of fun. Honestly, I'd say he's probably the better character for this game to play because of how vertical the stages are. If you do decide to get this game on consoles, then keep in mind it's only available on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, so you might have to do a bit of digging to play it that way. But you can get the PC and mobile versions on literally any device and it runs just fine. Sonic CD is a weird entry to be sure, but it's an important one. I'm a little bummed out that it's not quite as fleshed out or as focused as I would like it to be. But it's still classic Sonic at the end of the day, so you're at least going to get some enjoyment out of it. I also don't see any harm in trying it out now. Even if the HD opening is stretched out. Am I the only one bothered by that? I'm guessing it's probably just me being nitpicky. I mean, I don't really see anyone else getting that upset over it.
What the f*** is this?
Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm in the middle of a great discovery right now. I found a way to take 2 separate bits of gaming hardware and put them together, so that way I can make one big thing. This is set to be the most impressive display of gaming technology ever. I present to you the Nintendo Switch inside the dock. I know, right? It's wild. You take 2 things that on their own are kind of meh and not really that interesting, but when you put them together, it suddenly makes one cool thing that everyone just loves. This is set to be such a massive leap forward that I can in no way ever see this backfiring. Well, it didn't quite backfire. So Sonic CD was a modest hit, but it still sold far below both of its predecessors. While it wasn't the game's fault for the poor sales since it was on a relatively failing console, Sega wanted to shift focus back to making the next true sequel in the Sonic series, and that meant all hands on deck as Yuji Naka would return to Sega of Japan to work on the next entry in the series after going through some communication issues while working on Sonic 2. Sonic 3 had begun development with one common goal in mind: to make this the biggest Sonic game yet, the magnum opus of the series. Mission accomplished, I guess. That passion put a lot of faith in the game by Sega, as the marketing for this game was the most intense it had been for a Sonic game so far. Commercials got more production value, a surplus of merchandise at the ready, and even a televised world premiere in Puxatawny, Pennsylvania, only 91 miles away, and I could have been born in the promised land. Sonic 3 was building up to be one of the biggest hits that Sega had to offer. I mean, the hype for this game was insane, considering how much marketing and push and PR and all that other bullshit was behind it. Like, this had to have been a runaway success!
I think we should tell him later.
1 million copies? I mean, that's certainly nothing to scoff at, but compared to the first 2 games, that's surprisingly lower than anticipated. When looking at the big picture, I think there are two reasons as to why it didn't sell as well as the other games. The first is, by this point, I think people were getting a little burnt out by the series. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous, it was only the third game in the series. Well, in spirit, yes. Within the span of 3 months, there were 4 Sonic games released, including Sonic 3. Sonic CD, Spinball, and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine were all released in November of 1993. That is absurd to me. Now, I'll give Sonic CD some leeway as it was on a completely separate console, but Spinball and Mean Bean Machine have no excuse. It just baffles me that 2 spin-off games, one of which had nothing to do with Sonic outside the branding, were released so close to launch of the next mainline game in the series. But the other reason I think it didn't do as well is because, well, it wasn't the whole game. The game only had 6 levels in total, once again following the 2-act rule. This is less than Sonic 2 when considering how it only follows 2 acts. It's even less than Sonic 1. I think many people who bought it felt it was just so much of a lesser experience by comparison. While it was still enjoyed and received well, many felt it was incomplete, as if it was only half of the total experience. Oh, yeah, so about 7 months later, there would be another Sonic game released titled Sonic & Knuckles, which also sold about 1 million copies despite all of these selling.
You need to be checked.
Upon playing the game, people noticed how it looked extremely similar to Sonic 3. The graphics, the character designs, and even the title screen having the pseudo 3D sprites for Sonic. And then we get to see the game's true colors start to show, as when you look at the top of the cartridge, there appears to be a slot that could fit other Genesis games. Put Sonic 3 on there and we have ourselves a subtitle. Oh, yeah! And that's when people finally realized this was Sonic 3 in its complete form. 14 zones to play, new cutscenes and music, and a healthy selection of new and exclusive features in the game that can only be accessed by linking the 2 games together. So finally, you have the complete package.
Well, that was easy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the whole lock-on thing is what made it harder for consumers to get the urge to buy both, as it was probably just seen as 2 separate games that didn't really have much to do with each other. So the consumer was most likely to just buy one or the other. The casual gamer didn't really see anything that special with this. I mean, it is still a really weird concept, but years later, to many Sonic fans, they just don't understand.
Oh man, this is easily one of the most loved games in the series. Fans love everything about this game. The levels, the music, the playable characters. This game for many felt so massive and epic compared to the first 2, which on its own is kind of impressive considering how big those games could get. I've always thought fondly of it over the years, but I haven't fully played the game since I was 16, the ideal age to be making opinions.
I'm shot the Game Boy Zero.
I feel I owe it to this game to give it another go-round, now with a more open and logical mindset.
It's pretty.
Oh hell yeah, I love Sonic 3, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Knuckles.
Just rolls right off the tongue.
Going into the game, we are actually greeted by a menu that lets us save our progress.
You could do that this whole time?!
Sonic and Tails are flying to this mysterious island called Angel Island when they are suddenly attacked by new character Knuckles the Echidna. Nice dreads, they looking fresh. He steals the Chaos Emeralds from us as we quickly find out he's working with Robotnik. Yeah, Knuckles is both a little stupid and also pretty gullible, which makes it easy for Robotnik to trick him into attacking Sonic and help him with his evil plans. The plot kinda takes a back seat as we go through each zone chasing Robotnik and fall into a couple traps set by Knuckles. That is, until we reach the halfway point, when we discover that Knuckles is protecting this secret shrine that holds all these different emeralds. I like this, it adds a bit more depth to Knuckles, as this is where we find out that he's not just one of Robotnik's lackeys, but rather is trying to protect the Master Emerald. One big emerald that, well, we don't really know what it does, but we get the idea. It's very powerful, which is why Robotnik backstabs Knuckles and takes it for his own. Now understanding how much he messed up, Knuckles agrees to help us stop Robotnik by leading us to his newly rebuilt Death Egg. One epic fight later and we stop Robotnik. We return the Master Emerald to Knuckles, which causes Angel Island to float into the air.
I've been trying to fly with gems for years.
And that is the plot to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and honestly, looking back, this is kind of the perfect story this game could tell. It's very simple and easy to follow, but has enough depth and world building to keep the player guessing as to what could happen next. The scene where we see Knuckles exiting the Master Emerald Shrine is the perfect hook for the halfway point in this game, as it gives the player more defined motivation for Knuckles without one line of dialogue. That's honestly really impressive. My only complaint is that I do wish Knuckles had played a bigger part in the game's climax. Instead, he just kind of waves us on being like, I've had one
talk of the day. Now, that to me is what I like to see from a classic Sonic plot. If there's no massive chunks of dialogue or big cutscenes to be had, keep it simple, but not totally brain dead. There's a lot of really cool twists and turns that the plot goes through, especially for a game of this time, and it helps build out the world. It's really cool stuff. To me, it's like, honestly, the best of what a platformer story in this era could have been like. But man, if the game's story is hooking me this much and it's been this expanded upon, I can only imagine how much bigger and more expansive and different the gameplay must be. I mean, if it ain't broke, you know. Okay, let's get into this. The gameplay is largely kept the same as last time. You are Sonic, and you still go fast. What? Everything you can do before, you can do here. Run, jump, roll, and spin dash, but surprisingly enough, the super peel out from CD was removed entirely. I mean, I kind of understand that since the spin dash is back to how it worked in Sonic 2, but I don't know. I kind of wish they still kept it, maybe as a fun little option to get some speed and look cool. But there is a new move to this game called the Insta Shield. You jump, and when you're in the air, you hit the jump button again, which creates a little shield around you that gives you a little extra range for attack. Now, to the people who first used this thing, this is worthless! And those who saw its true use, I mean, I could work with this. Okay, in all fairness, the Insta Shield does have its utilities. It's good for landing more precise hits on enemies and completely destroy certain boss fights. But I think in comparison to, say, something like the spin dash, how it added so much to the game you can't imagine playing without it, the Insta Shield doesn't really have that. It feels a bit too situational to use it, and honestly has a bit too much of a learning curve to use effectively. But when you do, it is useful. It doesn't really detract from the game at all. And on that note, remember the shield item? That one power-up whose only purpose it was to give you an extra hit point? I've tried using a shield that way. I may have been lied to. This was always the lamest power-up in these games so far. Compared to the speed shoes and invincibility, the shield really just felt like an obligation to have so that players could hold on to their rings. In practice, it's useful, but it's easily the most boring power-up. And I think Sega realized that because when they were developing this game, they went, well, I guess it's time to juice this guy up. Shields are way more integral in this game compared to the others. Not only do they all look different with their own unique elemental effect, but they all give Sonic an additional power-up. The electric shield gives you a double jump and can attract rings to you from a distance, but they can't attract my affection. It also protects you from electric hazards, all two of them that appear in the game. The fire shield protects you from fire and lava while also giving you a mid-air dash. The shield is a ton of fun when you want to gain a lot of speed and in a way seems like a precursor to the homing attack we get in later games. The bubble shield might seem a little lame at first, but its real potential is shown during water levels. It keeps you from drowning, which is already a godsend, and it also gives you a bounce attack, which if you time correctly, you can get a ton of airtime, and this can help you find a lot of secrets. These power-ups really don't get the credit they deserve. Their abilities help to open up the level design to a whole new degree. Whenever I get one, I get excited knowing that there are likely a lot of secrets for me to discover while using it. The best part is that these are never used for situational reasons. More often than not, they're placed there as a way of helping to give you a little extra push while exploring the levels. And you're gonna need it because the level design in Sonic 3 and Knuckles is easily the biggest and most expansive the series has gotten to this point. Maybe even still to this day. The levels are triple the size of what they were in the previous games, and it feels like they took the best aspects of Sonic 2 and CD's level design and crafted into these massive worlds to explore, and completely ignored Sonic 1's level design, which is 1/3 good and 2/3 there's just the right amount of speed and exploration in this game. It never feels like it's favoring one or the other, but rather giving you the ability to choose based on your playstyle. If you're more of the go fast and don't stop player, you can do that. When ignoring the secrets, you can actually blaze past most of the levels pretty quickly. If you're more on the explorative side of things, then oh my god, you have something to look forward to here. Not only are these levels big, but they are incredibly dense and filled to the brim with secrets, new power-ups, alternate pathways, and special rings, which I'll get to in a second. This game prides itself on how much it rewards your sense of curiosity, as there is always something to find when you go off the beaten pathway. The one thing you are likely to come across the most are the big rings that take you to the special stages, and my goodness, after the 3 levels of indifference I felt towards the previous special stages, this version was a breath of fresh air. Just collect the blue spheres and you get the Chaos Emerald. All you have to do is turn and jump. Nothing more, nothing less. In a way, these are conceptually the simplest special stages the series has gotten to this point, but I don't really care that much because these are actually fun. The difficulty curve is just right. None of these stages blindside you in the way the half-pipe or maze did. The layouts are fair, and the difficulty never goes overboard. If anything, I'd say the biggest challenge in the stage is probably going to be your nerves. You do progressively get faster the longer you stay in the stage, and sometimes the speed does sneak up on you, but the ones in this game are more than manageable to get through. And yes, I said this game because, believe it or not, when you lock Sonic and Knuckles onto other cartridges, you get some different effects, like being able to play as Knuckles in Sonic 2, which is pretty cool. But when you lock it onto literally any other Genesis game, you get access to a select screen that lets you play Blue Sphere. And when you lock on Sonic 1, you have access to over 134,217,728 completely different Blue Sphere levels. I'm sorry, what? That is absurd. There can't be that many levels, right? I mean, if you do the math on how many spheres take up a grid while still being able to complete the stage, yeah, I guess there probably would be that many, but come on, I have a feeling that for every completely original layout, there are probably thousands of near copies that just change the placement of one sphere. If that theory is wrong, I'd honestly be impressed. It's just insane to me that there's this much content in a side mode that exists in what's already a freaking massive game, and I'm not just talking about the level design here. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is one of the largest Genesis files ever produced, and on top of how many levels there are, the level of detail in each and every one of them is insane. Every stage is filled to the brim with unique colors and details, but unlike Sonic CD, 3 and Knuckles uses it in service of the world design. It's not just weird shapes and colors for the hell of it, there's a story to be told in how these levels are designed from an artistic standpoint. It's an actual world, and it's pretty damn gorgeous. Even Sonic's sprite got a bit of an upgrade, and now has more detail and unique animations. That said, I still prefer his sprite from 2. I feel like his design was a bit cleaner and less busy while he moved. I still do like this sprite and how expressive they were able to make him though. All of this did come at a cost, however, 2 of them to be exact. This is probably the worst performing Sonic game of the classics. I say that because you are more likely to run into slowdown and lag in this one compared to any of the others. It's not the most common occurrence, but because of how intensive the graphics are in this game, it's pretty easy to spot when the game chugs, and being honest, it doesn't really seem like it holds a consistent 60 frames a second that well either. And the other cost is worse than you could ever imagine. One that made everyone run for their lives when they discovered what it would take to get this game made. Our wallets. Sonic 3 and Knuckles' file size was around 4 megabytes, which sounds laughable nowadays, but the maximum memory that a Genesis cartridge could hold was 4 megabytes. There were cards that held more space, but those cost a damn premium. Games from this era had already costed $60, and the large format versions would have been upwards of $80. Adjust for inflation, and that brings us up to around $155 nowadays. This was the main reason the game was split up. It simply would have cost too much to put the whole thing onto one cart, and considering how their deadline for the holiday was approaching, they had to release it in halves. Remember that tidbit going forward.
I feel that with some reworking, they probably could have gotten this game running pretty well on a normal cartridge, but considering how much love and craft went into every little detail in the game, I'm glad that we were able to see it in its entirety. There are 2 big consequences to having the game split into 2. The most notable difference you can see is in the order of the levels themselves. When splitting these games up, there had to be some rearrangements made to the level order, and you can actually see some of that come through in the final release. Each level ends with a transition from one zone onto the next, which is an awesome way to help the world feel more connected, but some transitions do make more sense than others. Like at the end of Carnival Night, you hop into a cannon and get launched off-screen into Ice Cap, which starts at the top of a very tall mountain during the day. I've been studying this phenomenon for years, and the math just doesn't add up. This is because Ice Cap was originally supposed to take place after Flying Battery. You can actually see remnants of this at the end of the stage when you see Sonic burst through the wall. That panel right there was originally supposed to be the snowboard he uses at the beginning of Ice Cap, so it would have gone something like this. The second, and probably the biggest change in splitting things up, was surprisingly the music. Sonic 3 had quite the collection of musicians on its team, a lot of which would stay with this series for years to come, but probably the most notable composer was Michael Jackson.
I'm sorry, what?
This is still one of the wildest things I think has ever happened in this franchise. To get who was easily the most famous person of all time and still one of the most insanely popular musicians in existence to work on a video game in 1993 no less, is insane to me. And good thing it was in 93 as well. Nothing else seemed to happen that year, damn it. Yeah, that really threw one hell of a wrench into things, as soon as the abuse allegations came out, Sega quickly cut ties with Jackson. The interesting thing is that this only really applies to Sonic 3 on its own, and not so much Sonic and Knuckles, as certain level themes really sound like something out of the Dangerous album and other songs by Jackson that hadn't been released yet. Sonic 3's solo credits theme sounds very similar to Stranger in Moscow, Launch Base has a voice clip that sounds remarkably like Jackson himself, and probably the most obvious one in my opinion is Carnival Night, as a section of the song sounds strikingly similar to Jam. This gets even more interesting when you notice how certain level tracks are just outright replaced when putting the two games together. When combined, the game uses the Act 1 boss track and Knuckles' theme from Sonic & Knuckles. Sonic 3 on its own, the two themes I mentioned are not only completely different, but they share a drum beat that would eventually be used in Jackson's 95 release, Blood on the Dance Floor. The funny thing is, I see the moments where the developers were obviously trying to patch something up because it got moved around, and I find that weirdly endearing. Like, you can see the problem solving at bay here, and the fact that it pays off is really cool in my opinion. I haven't talked about the levels yet, haven't I? Angel Island, a pretty decent starter level to kick things off. Seems like any other green and tropical stage when suddenly, Jesus Robotnik, you had to burn the whole place down? Of all the places to do this, why would you have a gender reveal party here?
I guess it's a boy.
Hydro City, I'm surprised it took them this long to have a water level that's, fun. The pace remains fast, and you don't even stay in the water that long, and visually, it might be my favorite stage in the game. I love the way the accented purples are in the background, and mixed with Act 2's theme, this is probably my favorite water level in the classic series. Marble Garden is next up, and honestly, I keep forgetting the stage even exists. The way it looks is definitely cool, but I don't know, I guess I always found the stage to feel a little too meandering at points. It doesn't really seem like there's a clear goal when going through it. The second act is interesting in concept as the marble ruins collapse around you, but I really feel like it doesn't do anything that interesting with the concept. It really just adds a bunch of crusher obstacles. Next up, we have Carnival Night Zone, and man, we are 2 for 2 on levels I really don't care about. This stage can be fun and wacky, but my biggest problem with it is the length. I always either time out or just barely make it through the few seconds left on the clock, and in my personal opinion, none of the gimmicks in this stage really warrant the extra time spent here. Also, Act 2 has water in it, and I'm sorry, what carnival would I want to go to that's constantly flooded? It just seems like a pain in the ass to get around. Ice Cap has always been a weirdly cozy one for me. I don't know, the way it looks is so simple and yet beautiful, especially in Act 2 where you see all the glaciers in the background. And the music is very serene and calm, it almost sounds like it's from a different game. Not in a bad way by any means, it actually seems like a pretty decent pace changer. The level itself is alright, I don't think there's anything that memorable in it, but the way it presents itself is really nice. Launch Base caps off the game if you're playing Sonic 3 on its own. Man, that's short. As a mid-game level, it feels pretty justified. It's certainly more difficult, but nothing too crazy. Weirdly enough, this is where you would get 2 bosses if you were playing Sonic 3 alone. I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea what this thing's supposed to be. It looks like Robotnik built it, realized it didn't attack, and then put a ball in it. I mean, I guess he could throw it. Yes! And the second boss is Big Arms, who has a bitchin' boss track and is also a complete bitch to hit. Seriously, this thing's a pain in the ass to land any decent damage on. That, and this is the only thing in the original trilogy that can actually hurt Supersonic. I guess that's how you defeat invincibility, just get swole arms. I guess it would be hard as a mid-game boss, but I don't know, I feel like it would act as a cool way to transition into the next part of the game. Speaking of which, we are now on to the Sonic and Knuckles portion of the game, starting with Mushroom Hill. This stage always felt so cool to me. The pace is fast and bouncy, but has some really neat gimmicks with these swings and these... I have no idea what they are, but they look cool. I also like this bit in Act 2 where you literally move through the seasons and you get a completely different look for the stage. Although I do have to question the logic behind this. Did we stay in this one stage for months, or is this area of the island literally split up by weather? My backyard has been like that for months, and it's kind of a problem.
You make no sense. Flying Battery is up next, and it's weirdly more difficult than I think many would have expected it to be. There's a lot of crushers, spikes, and bottomless pits that tend to sneak up on you. Also, the Act 2 bosses kind of suck. You have this moment that's literally the Wing Fortress boss in Sonic 2, except you literally have to dodge and you'll win. It's a weird pace breaker for this point in the game, and this boss, I hate it. I hate this boss. No matter what character you play as, this fight is just finicky, and it doesn't help that grabbing your rings is nearly impossible here. Other than that, this stage itself is pretty fun, and I do love how fast you can go, and the music is really awesome. I just think that in context of this being the second level of Sonic and Knuckles on its own, it's a weird difficulty spike. In total, it's actually not that bad, but just on its own, it's a little weird. Sandopolis, you know, there are many things that us Sonic fans will just never agree on, but I think all of us can agree that this is easily the worst level in the game. Not so much Act 1, as it does keep up a decent pace and it does look really nice, but Act 2 is so damn boring. It's easily the longest level in the game by far, and it's only because every unique element in this stage moves at a snail's pace. You gotta slowly push these levers and open up these doors, but make sure you get through the doors on time, otherwise it closes and you have to open it all over again. You have to pop open this cork that releases all this sand that you must ride up to the very top, which takes forever. And you have to face these ghosts that get more powerful as the room gets darker, and that's just really rude. I mean, who died and made them ghosts? Lava Reef. You know, this level is one that I always found really interesting from a thematic standpoint. The level design is pretty good, it's a fairly standard lava level, but there is a lot of fun to be had when you use the fire shield. I mean, you can literally just walk on the lava, it's awesome. But then something happens when you go to Act 2. The entire look and feel of the level is different. The color palette is much cooler, it goes for more of a Crystal Cave aesthetic, and the music for Act 2 is way more calm than Act 1, it almost has a mystical kind of feel to it. That's another neat thing about this game. Instead of one music track per zone, each individual act gets its very own unique arrangement of their own theme. It's more so a change in tempo and arrangement, but each act has a track that fits with its design, like how Hydra City has a calm feel in the first act and a more intense feel in the second act. Or how Carnival Night uses more traditional carnival sounding melodies in Act 1, where Act 2 has more of a beatbox feel. To go on a quick aside, there's something about the music in 3 Knuckles that always stood out to me. It's not my favorite OST in the series, but there is an underlying feeling throughout it all that just works in my opinion. I think it's that, 1, the stage tracks try their best to fit the location you're in closer than the other games, which in a lot of ways really helps to give the areas more atmosphere. And 2, the extra themes really go a long way in emphasizing the intensity of the situation. Robotnik's Act 2 boss theme might be my favorite boss track in the classic lineup, as it really finds that right balance of threatening but still catchy. This also works on the game's favor, as there are a lot more cutscenes in this game than previously. There's even an entire level that's not really dedicated to having super interesting level design, but rather to just be a giant cutscene. Hidden Palace Zone is pretty much that, as it's just one giant hallway leading up to the boss fight with Knuckles. But it's a really cool bit of world building that we get to see before the end game. It really helps flesh out that Angel Island has this rich history to it that we may not know entirely what it's about, but we know it's there and it's something that we can discover more of. Also, Knuckles' boss fight is really easy and is made even funnier when you do this.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
After we beat him is when we get led into a chamber that houses the Master Emerald, as well as these pedestals for 7 other emeralds.
Neat.
So our next stage is kind of an interesting one, Sky Sanctuary. This does lean a little bit into the realm of a cutscene level, but there are a lot of cool gimmicks and obstacles for you to avoid, and I also just love the way it looks. It's really pretty. That, and I love the feeling of trying to climb up this tower to catch up with the Death Egg. Strangely though, it's only one act. I guess they were treating it more as a segue level rather than a new location. This is also the only stage to have 3 bosses, all of them being against the new foe, Sonic, and I'm guessing he didn't spend much time on his assignments, as the first 2 bosses are literally ones from Sonic 1 and 2. Then we have the final level in the game, the Death Egg. And this is easily my favorite final level in the classic series. The way this place looks mixed with the music just makes it feel so climactic. The challenge is just about right, it doesn't overstay its welcome, we can travel through onion rings, and the bosses feel the most threatening they've ever felt in the entire series. The final boss in Death Egg is pretty awesome as you're facing off against this giant robot, and it ends with a chase trying to catch up with the Master Emerald. But that's not where it actually ends, as this game actually has a true final level called the Doomsday Zone. The only way you can access it is by getting all the emeralds, as this is the first ever supersonic boss fight in the series. Despite how it is kind of simple and easy, this is such a cool fight. The first phase has you guiding these missiles into the ship's nose. Wait, why does it have a nose? Does it need to breathe? It's in space, you don't need it! And the final section is just ramming into the thing until it's destroyed. Everything about this finale just feels so right. The music is so epic and fast-paced, and while the fight may be a bit more different than players would expect, it's still really easy to get a grasp on and understand. And the final cutscene of Sonic falling out of space with the Sky Sanctuary's theme playing in the background, and to have Tails come in at the last second with his plane and catch the 2 of them, it's just so satisfying. It really feels like they fixed the mistake from Sonic 2 where the good ending feels less emotionally fulfilling than the normal one. This is just perfect. And then you return the Master Emerald back to Angel Island and watch it float back up to the sky. This just feels so right. Well, that was a lot of game to cover, but it seems I got just about everything according to my notes. But you know what? I feel like being a bit risky. I'm gonna hold it with this hand now. I am really off today. So when playing Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles separately, you get the Chaos Emeralds in both, and you can play as Super Sonic in both. But when you combine them, not only do you get Super Sonic, but if you get all 7 emeralds before Mushroom Hill, we get to collect another set called Super Emeralds. The way we get clued into this is actually kind of funny, because we enter Mushroom Hill and see a cutscene of Knuckles very worriedly looking around before closing the door, as if he's like, I hope no one finds my pornography. Going into this room leads us to a special ring that really wants to give me a seizure. You go into the seizure-inducing ring, and it leads you to that area in the Hidden Palace Zone where all the emeralds are taken away from you and placed on the pedestals. This is where we play the special stages from Sonic and Knuckles. Now, on paper, this might seem arbitrary, but the good thing is that you don't really lose out on any extra content if you decide not to get them. You only need the 7 Chaos Emeralds to unlock the Doomsday Zone and the true final boss. However, again, the Super Emeralds isn't just for bragging rights, you do actually get something for going the extra distance to get them. If you do get all of them, you don't get Supersonic back, but instead you get the next freaking level, Hypersonic. Okay, in all seriousness, I'm gonna give a warning that this mode has a lot of flashing colors and lights. It can be pretty intense on the eyes and is very likely to trigger those with epilepsy. I guess Sega didn't get the idea that flashing lights would hurt the eyes because they were too busy hurting my soul. So if you want to skip ahead, go to this time and you should be good. Thank you. Hypersonic is kind of ridiculous. You still get the extra speed and jump height, but now you can't drown, and you also get this dash ability that admittedly is really hard on the eyes. Like, Jesus Christ, we get it, you're cool. This not only dashes in whatever direction you want, it also acts as a screen nuke. I wish I could screen nuke. Again, much like the previous games, these are sort of optional. You don't need them to fight the final boss, all you need are the Chaos Emeralds. But if you do get them all, you transform into Hypersonic in Doomsday Zone, which is honestly pretty badass, and you get an additional cutscene during the ending where Knuckles stands with the Master Emerald and smiles as he watches us take off. The fact they included something even as simple as a cutscene that puts a good end cap to this character just because you went the extra distance and got everything is really something special in my opinion. It's those little details and extra craft that I feel make Sonic 3 and Knuckles so memorable. It has this certain grandness and gravitas to it all. And that's only when you're playing as Sonic. Yeah, there is shockingly more to talk about here, as you can also play as both Tails and Knuckles for their own separate campaigns. Tails is kind of the easy mode, since his flight really makes all the obstacles a non-issue, but his fight in Marble Garden is terrible. When you play as Sonic, all you have to do is jump into him, that's it. Tails has this thing where if you touch any enemy with your tails while flying, it'll do damage. That is the only way to beat him, and it's just so stupid. I really don't think they thought this fight all the way through with Tails. But other than that, Tails' journey is pretty simple, all things considered. You don't get a super form when you collect all the Chaos Emeralds, which is a little strange, but you do get one for collecting all the Super Emeralds, and this is absolutely absurd. I get all the properties of being super while being able to fly, and I have an army of birds at my disposal. This is peak existence. I can't top this. That's it. Goodbye. Knuckles' story is actually kind of interesting as it takes place after the events of the main game. I guess he's on cleanup duty, and I wouldn't want to clean up after Sonic.
He leaves such a mess.
His playthrough is also different since he can glide and climb walls, which definitely makes his story more explorative. You even get access to completely exclusive areas, which is really cool, and also totally butchers the length of some stages. Carnival Night normally took me 10 minutes with Sonic, and it's barely 2 with Knuckles. Also, there's weirdly no boss fight in Carnival Night Act 2, and I never understood that. Even though these changes sound like they streamline the experience, Knuckles almost feels like the game's hard mode. His speed takes a little longer to get going, and his jump height is noticeably shorter than Sonic and Tails. The exclusive areas you go through can sometimes be more difficult, like Launch Base Act 2. You actually go through the areas of construction here, which is pretty cool from a story perspective, but it does feel more difficult than Sonic's run. Also, strangely enough, when you play as Knuckles, you actually fight Big Arms at the end of Launch Base, which I still don't understand why only he fights him. I guess the Egg Robo just found him lying around and decided to use it. Which reminds me, you don't actually fight Robotnik in the story, you just fight one of his robots. Except for Flying Battery. I know they just forgot to swap out his sprite, but I like to think Robotnik just wanted to come in and try again. You can get both sets of emeralds again, and thankfully Knuckles does get both a super and hyper form. Knowing this, I'd say Tails got gypped, but he got a bird army, okay? I think that's sufficient. The biggest difference in Knuckles' playthrough is actually the ending. You don't go to the Death Egg at all, since it's destroyed. Instead, you have a battle in Sky Sanctuary against Mecha Sonic. Yeah, a cool detail you're likely to miss is that when you defeat him in Sonic's story, he doesn't actually explode, but rather deactivates. And now I guess Mecha Sonic is just trying to finish off the mission, as he uses the power of the Master Emerald to give him his own super form. That's honestly pretty cool. The fight isn't terribly hard, but it can catch you off guard, but I love the arena. Seeing Angel Island slowly fall out of the sky while these two fight makes for a pretty thrilling climax to this campaign. After you defeat him, you grab the Master Emerald and once again return it back to the island. Not without a little last minute help by Sonic. Why is he there? Who cares? They're friends now. And that is all of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. I forgot how much was in this game. It is still baffling to me that they were able to make a game, a platformer even, that was this grand and massive. From the big levels to the big story to the multiple characters that have their own unique part of the game to go through. The fact that on top of all of this, there's even a multiplayer mode. It's just racing, but they made new level themes and music for these stages in a mode that most people don't normally play in a Sonic game. The polish and detail and craft and everything that is ambitious about this game is truly something to be admired. There's a reason why this is held as the gold standard, the high point of Sonic, of 2D Sonic, basically all of Sonic. Everyone sees this as the main thing to live up to. So why do I not like it quite as much as everyone else? This fact was the bitterest pill for me to swallow. Back when I talked about this game in 2015, I was absolutely in the camp that not only was this the best classic Sonic game, but it was by far my favorite. And while I still feel it is the best made and designed classic Sonic game, it's not my favorite anymore. I pondered this for a while, and I think I found out why when I thought about when I played it. I played this almost immediately after playing 2, and despite loving everything this game has to offer, I feel it's more draining to get through. Sonic 2's pace was so tight and refined. There was never a slow moment that felt out of place or a level that massively overstayed its welcome. Okay, almost. 3 and Knuckles' pace feels like it drags a bit more than I would like it to. Maybe it's because the bigger levels mean I spend more time in them. Maybe it's because I feel I have to look everywhere for a special ring, which can feel a bit meanderish after a while. Maybe it's the larger amount of stages or added story elements. I don't really know what it is, but I feel like this game is almost more of a chore to get through, at least compared to 2. And I don't know if this is a controversial opinion or not, but we live in a world where Sonic Mania exists. And despite the extremely valid criticism that there isn't enough original material, that to me is the gold standard of how a Sonic game should be paced. It's about as long as 3 and Knuckles, but everything feels very concise and fluent. There's not an ounce of fat anywhere on this game. Well, with 3 and Knuckles, I feel like there's a lot I have to kind of just nudge my way through in order to get to the really fun stuff. And I don't want to make it sound like I dislike Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Far from it. I would much rather play it over the first game or CD. Hell, a lot of the modern stuff doesn't even hold a candle to this one. I just think I'm personally probably in the camp that feels that Sonic 3 and Knuckles is far more impressive and influential than it being 100% enjoyable for me personally. Does that make sense? You know how like you see that film debate about how like one film is clearly like better made or like, well, better made, that's a different argument, but like more influential in its own way, it has a lot more to say, but people would still rather watch something that's just more enjoyable. That's kind of how this one feels to me. I don't know if that's like an apt comparison, but do you see what I mean? I feel like I will always have an immense amount of respect for Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Nothing will ever take that away from it. But I would much rather play Sonic 2 or Mania over it, just because I find it more enjoyable. I just find both of them, just in general, are a lot tighter and a lot more fun. But here's the crazy thing. Sonic 3 and Knuckles, I still like it! I will never take away what this game has done for not just the series, but gaming in general. This was one of the first big leaps in evolving the platforming genre. It became more than just saving the princess or defeating aliens, or hell, even defeating evil scientists. It became about seeing a new and creative world that felt real. Even if it's fictional, that doesn't matter because the feeling you get from it is so genuine. It has so much care and detail put behind it. 3 and Knuckles feels like one of those rare cases where the passion and quality are on completely equal ground. There is not 1 ounce of corporate cynicism or creator indifference anywhere in this. Honestly, the game's biggest flaw is the fact that it was split up to begin with. I feel that presenting the game in this method really hurt its chances of being as big a runaway success as the first 2 games. That because of the whole Michael Jackson thing, this game rarely gets a re-release, especially after Jackson's death. It's still a crime in my eyes that this game didn't get the same treatment 1, 2, and CD did on mobile. There was a build in development, but it just went away, and that really sucks. Although I am happy we are getting something along the lines of that remake in Sonic Origins. I haven't played it yet, so I'll hold judgment for now. All I can really hope for is that they just don't pull a Colors Ultimate on us. Another time. Final note, play this game, it's great. Play Sonic 2, it's great. Play the remakes of Sonic 1 and CD, those versions are great. All in all, just give these games a shot. They are not everyone's cup of tea, and I absolutely understand that. But I feel this lineup has such a unique voice that really hasn't been replicated in gaming since. Hell, even to this day, this franchise still has problems doing that. I've never really been one for the whole modern Sonic versus classic Sonic debate. I feel like it's just a matter of what your preference is, but playing these games again has really opened my eyes to the kind of quality you can get from this series just with some people who have a lot of passion. That's all it takes, just a little bit of passion and people who absolutely believe it will work. Remember when the Sonic movie was gonna be bad? Hey, guess what? It wasn't, and it got a sequel, and it was pretty damn good. Like, that shouldn't have happened, but because the people who made it really cared about making it as good as it was, it succeeded. It's that simple. And I guess that is why there's a bit of a bias towards the classic games rather than any other era of this series. There was that balance of quality and passion behind it. While you do get some games that are way more quality than passion or passion than quality, this era really found that balance and it took full advantage of it. So in that case, give it a try. I think this is a series that everyone can really get something out of. I gotta say, I'm really glad I took a look at these games again. I feel like my perspective on them has changed a fair bit over the years, but I don't know. I will always appreciate what they've done for me. Like, they were some of the first bits of retro gaming I ever got. They were the reason I got into retro gaming in the first place, the reason I got into collecting games in general. And because of that, I'm able to talk about games as much as I want, make videos about games, like just make any kind of medium I want talking about games. I know that sounds a bit hyperbolic, but it really wouldn't have been a thing without these games. At least for me personally, like this was my gateway drug into gaming. Damn you got me high on games. But like, I don't know, like I will always appreciate what these games have done for me, and they will always hold a special place in my heart. Despite my disagreements with like how the series has kind of gone at this point, with exception to the films, I don't know. I feel like they'll always be there. I can always go back to them as a source of like not only comfort but also like knowing that like I can still push through things and still just like, even like if something like is a bit tired or like if I want to talk about something again, I'll be okay talking about it, because if these games have shown anything, my opinion will change, but I'll still respect them. And I feel that's going to be the case for any kind of game I talk about. That was weirdly emotional. Well, on that note, if I ever decide to look at these games again in the future, I guess I should give my future self a few pointers. Get good, don't be a bitch, live long and prosper, learn how to schedule shit, take your time with Knuckles, he can be a bit much at times, and if there's one thing Sonic 3 Knuckles has taught me, it's that half of something is never quite as good as the full thing.
Is never quite as good as the full thing.
Damn it!
I am happy we are getting something along the lines of that remake in Sonic Origins. I haven't played it yet, so I'll hold judgment for now. All I can really hope for is that they just don't pull a Colors Ultimate on us. They didn't. Oh boy. Hey, for once timing actually worked out in my favor. Just as I finished up the 3 and Knuckles video, Origins just happened to be released that exact same weekend. I guess my poor sense of scheduling actually paid off. I'm not gonna lie, I was initially hesitant to look at this game because, I mean, I just reviewed all the classic Sonic games, and while this re-release looks quality, it's still classic Sonic. My thoughts on them aren't really gonna change that much, at least not this soon after I played them. The added widescreen looked like a bonus, there seemed to be some extra bells and whistles placed here, but I felt like it wasn't enough to dedicate an entire video to. But this version got me thinking, like, it's cool we get to see the same people who remade the other games for mobile and Sonic Mania come back to remake these versions as well as Sonic 3. And then I thought to myself, I haven't talked about Sonic Mania Plus yet. A few years after Mania was released, we got an expanded version called Sonic Mania Plus, which was also sold as DLC if you already owned the game from launch. This version would get a physical release with an art book and everything, but the biggest draw was that we were getting both a new game mode and 2 new playable characters from the series, Mighty the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel. I'm pretty sure that most people who bought this game and were new to the series just assumed that these were new characters, but us fans knew better.
I'm surprised they were able to get out.
Both Mighty and Ray were created for the 1993 arcade game Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, which just from looking at footage of it looks like a wild time. Mighty, though, is probably most famous for his appearance in Knuckles Chaotix as one of the playable characters, but this would be the last time we'd see Mighty in the games, and Ray? Pfft, poor Ray, he never made it past the arcades. They made plenty of appearances in the comics, especially when Ian Flynn was writing, and they're great in that. If I had to guess, the only reason as to why these 2 were selected is because Christian Whitehead and Headcanon most likely pitched it to Sega as more nostalgia for them to bank off of. I would not see Sega or Sonic Team giving this the green light if not for that reason. So before I get ahead of myself, I wanted to dedicate just one video to both of these games, as I've already looked at every single classic game on this collection. Twice now. I'm stupid. And personally, I feel my original review of Mania, cringiness aside, I think it does a fine enough job explaining why the game is so great to begin with. So, you know, consider this more of an updated thoughts, if you will. Whereas with Origins, I'm more interested in seeing what was added for the re-release. I originally was going to do 2 playthroughs of Mania after finishing the classic series, but after I finished up my first run as Sonic, I also felt like doing a run as both Tails and Knuckles individually. On top of that, doing a full run of the Encore mode, which in total leads up to 4 complete playthroughs. Can you tell I really love this game? Sonic Mania may have come out 5 years ago, but it still remains one of the best games to ever be made in the series. The love and dedication from the developers is so prominent in every single aspect of this game. The controls feel the best they've ever felt in the series, honestly even a little better than the original games. Graphically, the game is absolutely gorgeous, the soundtrack by T-Lopes is still magnificent, and the original stages made for this game are top notch and some of my favorite in the franchise. Hell, every stage in this game is designed great and improves upon the ones that were kinda weaker from the classic games. It still surprises me that they somehow made Oil Ocean, one of the weaker stages in Sonic 2, actually fun to play through, and even made its main theme fun to listen to. If they're able to make this stage good, then these are some top tier game designers. The game's biggest drawback, though, is its lack of original content. While every stage is a blast, 8 of the 12 zones are from previous Sonic games. Now, in all fairness, most of the choices were for stages that we haven't really gotten before, a lot of them coming from Sonic CD and 3. Honestly, in my opinion, the most egregious the nostalgia gets is with Green Hill and Chemical Plant being the first 2 stages, when they were already the first 2 stages in Generations, a game that also had returning stage themes from older games. And while that was the entire premise of Generations, it definitely feels a bit more tacked on in Mania. It's a move that I think is pretty obvious was from Sega to push the nostalgia train without any proper respect or thought to how these stages would transition from one to the next. Why else would the plot revolve around a ruby that transports our heroes through time and space? I'll tell you why. It was the only way to have these stages in the game without naming them something different. In hindsight, it definitely feels more like a compromise rather than a decision to improve the game's narrative. Also, I'd like to make a quick correction to my original review where I say that Robotnik and the Hardboiled Heavies are working together. They were actually at odds with each other the entire time trying to get the Phantom Ruby for themselves. Why did I not know this in my original review? I went to art school. There were some additional changes made to Mania when the Plus expansion came out, aside from the Encore mode and new characters. The menus got a much needed makeover and look way more slick now. Every stage received a level transition to help make the stages feel a bit more connected, and a lot of them are great. I love seeing the sub from Oil Ocean speed into Lava Reef uncontrollably, or how at the end of Metallic Madness we see the power go out as Titanic Monarch becomes operational. Metal Sonic, I mean geez, his original boss fight was so lame, and now... Well, that's certainly an upgrade. Stuff like that really helps make the whole campaign feel more complete, as this was the devs' last chance to finish what they had set out to do, since apparently Sega had forced them into a really harsh deadline. Now, where have I heard that before?
I know a doctor. You can go see him.
Encore mode is the new adventure added for this game, and it's pretty true in advertising. It's literally an encore run of the game again, now with new looks for every level. The good ending of Mania shows Sonic being transported through this portal, which acts as a tie-in to Sonic Forces, and considering that, when he returns, Sonic should be saying to himself, well, that was a colossal waste of time, and runs as far as he can from the mediocrity. Lord knows I'm still trying to. Jesus! Encore mode starts us off by going through Angel Island Zone, and probably the best it's ever looked in the series. I mean, my god, the pixel art is so good here. But it's not as in-depth as you'd expect it to be. It's pretty much a cutscene level to introduce us to Mighty and Ray. And I'm guessing that everyone on the team really liked Knuckles Chaotix, as that is a similar capsule you free your first partner in that game. It even uses the same victory chime when you select your character. And the new Metal Sonic boss is directly inspired from the fight against him in that game. Say what you will about the nostalgia pandering, but at least they go for the stuff that isn't immediately obvious or overdone, and my god, they go for broke on it. Selecting between Mighty and Ray clues us into the biggest change in Encore mode, the new party system. Instead of lives, you now collect the game's playable characters to keep in your party, almost like an RPG. That's it, Sonic Mania is an RPG, move aside, it's better than all of you. You can only switch between 2 characters that are currently out, which I kinda get since having all 5 of them out would be pretty hectic. But that's exactly why I'd want them all here. The chaos with all 5 playable characters being available would have been amazing. But with that said, being able to switch between even just 2 characters really does add a whole new different kind of strategy to the game. You now have access to everyone's unique abilities, which opens up the level design something fierce. If you happen to not like the character you have out, you can change the one you're playing as by finding one of these swap panels, or you can reshuffle the whole party by finding a randomizer panel. So you always have ways of changing your characters if you just look around a little bit. It is kind of a shame though that these are really
the only worthwhile power-ups in this mode. I mean, we do get speed shoes, invincibility, and the basic shield, but the elemental shields are now kind of limited since Sonic is the only one who can use their special abilities. And instead of life capsules, you now have character capsules so you can add them to your party. Having no lives in this mode does sort of make the rings a little less compelling to collect, as they're now only used for protection. Maybe if you got a random character after crossing 100 rings would have been a good substitute, but that probably could have torn the difficulty in half. When you die, you won't start from the last checkpoint, but rather switch to whoever your partner is. You only get a game over if all your characters are dead, which means you either have to get more continues or start the whole stage over again. This does in a certain sense make Encore mode the game's, well, dedicated hard mode, as the lack of lives does require you to be a bit more careful with how you play, as you can't afford to die as much this time. Although I didn't really have a problem with that on this playthrough, as I don't really die that much in Mania to begin with, so if you're decently familiar with the game as is, this shouldn't be that much harder. And the nice thing is you do get more party members through the bonus stages you access by passing a checkpoint. Instead of Blue Sphere like in the main game, now it's a pinball machine that you can get some extra goodies in if you manage to hit the ball all the way to the top. Not gonna lie, I might like these bonus stages the most. I feel like it's a nice relaxer that I can sort of turn my brain off and play a little bit. But if you want some bonuses with extra challenge, the special stages are back, and yeesh, they're so much harder in this mode. The layouts are pretty similar as the ones in the main game, but now there are so many more pits and spikes to avoid, and the UFO is so much faster now. You need to go Mach 3 in order to catch up. It's impossible otherwise. It's interesting since it does feel like a natural progression to where the original 7 special stages left off from, as if these were special stages 8 through 14. If you want the super modes and the game's good ending, then you'll need to nab these, but good luck trying to get them on one playthrough. I can't do it. It doesn't help that they're already harder, but the special ranges are in completely different locations now, and you need to have some pretty extensive knowledge of the level design in order to find a lot of these. Most of them are not very obvious at all. If you want the easiest way to get them, beat the game on your current save file, go to Flying Battery Act 1, and there's one right at the start of the level. Just keep resetting until you get them all. I know this is cheating, but I already got them in Mania mode, and it still took me close to an hour to get them all here. That's how many retries it took me. I spent so long here that the music glitched up and stopped playing. I think I've seen too much. Even though you have access to all 5 characters in Encore mode, I mainly stuck with Mighty and Ray for this playthrough. Again, I just did a playthrough with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles individually, so I wanted to give them some attention. The nice thing is that you can play as them in Mania mode if you want, so all grounds are covered. And I'm honestly glad I stuck with them. I love playing as Mighty and Ray in this game. Mighty has this ground stomp ability, which is great for finding new pathways and stopping on a dime if needed. He's also immune to spikes if he's curled up into a ball, which is a really cool detail. He is an armadillo after all, and what better quality to give him than having a thick hide? If you want the high speed you get with Sonic while being able to fly like Tails, then you pick Ray. Being a flying squirrel, he can glide long distances and get some major air. His gliding controls do have a bit of a learning curve. It's very similar to how the Cape Feathered is in Super Mario World. There's a certain rhythm to flying with him, but when you get the hang of it, Ray is a ton of fun to play as. The multiple characters are where you're gonna get the most fun out of, since the stages in Encore mode from a design standpoint are pretty much the same. I mean, it's cool being able to explore certain paths with other characters. If you have Knuckles as your partner, you can access all of his areas and play them with anyone. And Mighty's been given some new areas to discover with his ground stomp, but the design mainly stays the same. The only stage off the top of my head that feels radically different from the rest is Mirage Saloon Act 1. You don't go on the plane anymore, which I'm honestly kind of happy about. This stage wasn't really that fun to begin with. And Knuckles' version was tailored more for his abilities, so this version has some adjustments so that everyone can get through just fine. But let's not kid ourselves, the biggest change in these stages is the way they look. Every zone has been given a new paint job, and they're good. Some of them do look really stunning. Green Hill at sunset is gorgeous. Chemical Plant's cool hues really add a new feeling to the level's energy. Studiopolis takes place at sunrise and is incredible. Priss Garden now takes place at night and is lit up by these large torches in the background. This might be my favorite recolor in the game. Stardust Speedway and Metallic Madness take after their bad future counterparts from Sonic CD, and I thought that was a really cool touch. There are other ones though that I'm not completely sold on, if I'm being perfectly honest. Lava Reef Act 1 looks like they just made the image more red. Act 2 has the crystals change colors, and I feel it just looks a little off. Making Hydro City look like Labyrinth Zone is just gross. And Titanic Monarch, it's Irish?
Woo, I tell you, I'm glad they're including us mix in video games now.
When Mania Plus came out, it ran you for about $30, and I feel that's the perfect amount for this game. Between all the playthroughs with all the characters, Encore mode, multiplayer, time attack, etc., there was plenty in this game to warrant that price. Paying that much for it now, yeah, that might be a bit more debatable, but you can find good deals for this game everywhere, especially on Steam, and if there's one version of the game you should get, it's that one. The modding scene for this game is insane. You get a lot of cool stuff that fans made for this game on PC, and during summer and holidays, the sales are extremely solid. With all that said, Mania on its own is still absolutely fantastic. Going back to it for me felt like putting on a cozy pair of shoes. I knew what to expect and it gave me that and then some. I don't know if this game will make any detractor of the series feel any differently since, well, it basically took what worked from the classic games and just adds on top of it. But considering the time this game came out in 2017 and seeing the quality of other games in the series up to that point, I'm just happy we have a product that has some honest to God love behind it. Even more than just the way it was designed, the way it looks has a ton of love, the way the music sounds has a ton of love, even the marketing has a ton of love behind it. There were so many animated trailers and shorts based on this game. Sonic Mania Adventures displays that in full blast. There is so much love put behind these shorts. If people wonder why this game was successful, this is why. There is love put behind everything in this game. Do yourself a favor and get it. It's fantastic and deserves the love and praise it's gotten. Now, Origins. I think I can speak on behalf of all of us when I say this definitely intrigued us when Sega first teased it. It was announced in 2021 during a Sonic Central livestream. Nothing from the game proper was shown, all we saw was footage from the mobile remakes of Sonic 1, 2, and CD, with footage from 3 Knuckles that was clearly ripped from somewhere else. I mean, look at how soft this clip is compared to the rest. They did not record the game for this trailer.
The signs were there, we just refused to believe.
That looks so stupid. But from what was said during the livestream, all of the games will be remade from the ground up in widescreen, plus a few extra features. Now, Sonic 1 and 2 being re-released is nothing new, those two are on everything. But Sonic CD hasn't had a proper version since its release in 2011, which wasn't a problem for PC and mobile users, but on consoles, it was stuck on PS3 and Xbox 360. So to see it brought forward again was pretty nice. Sonic 3 and Knuckles though, this would be the first time, I want to say since Mega Collection Plus, that the game would be made available while still being able to lock the two together. Any other re-release of the game would either keep the game separate or just not include them at all. This seemed like the chance for Sonic 3 and Knuckles to get the remake on par with the other games it deserved. Alongside that was a proper announcement for Sonic Colors Ultimate, a full HD remake of the original Wii game. So we had an HD version of one of Sonic's most popular games, and a collection of the classics in widescreen. Colors Ultimate was set to come out later that year, and Origins set to come out sometime in 2022. Everything seemed just fine. And then Colors Ultimate came out, and if my first reaction was anything to go by, oh god, it's dead! What the hell was this? Colors Ultimate is a bad freaking version of the original. There's plenty to go into whenever I get to talk about this game in its own video, but to put it in short, the game looks worse, the cutscenes weren't scaled up properly, most of the remixes were inferior to the original counterparts, it was filled with bugs and glitches that could sometimes cause seizures, and it crashed way too many times for it to be a coincidence, with the final crash of my playthrough corrupting my save data. A near 100% run of the game was lost because of this. And when we saw the kind of management Sega had with the team that made this version, you can see why it was this bad. There was no quality control, and it was rushed to make a deadline when it clearly needed more time to cook. I was so baffled when I lost my save data that I went on a solid 10-minute long rant that my girlfriend thankfully recorded. I was at that much of a loss with this game. And during that rant, I realized something.
Oh my god, there's gonna be like a goddamn collection of the original 3 games coming out? If Colors Ultimate's this bad, what the fuck are the ports of those games gonna be like?
Needless to say, I was worried. If a port of Sonic Colors, one of the simplest games in the series, was this poorly made, a version of the classics this bad would probably blow up the earth. And the closer we got to launch, there were even more concerns that came up in the fandom. Apparently, the music composed by Michael Jackson in Sonic 3 was going to be replaced by remixes of the prototype tracks for that game. And I think one of the biggest blunders by far is when Headcanon, one of the main developers for the remakes of the classic games, had to reassure people that the most they were doing for Origins was making a version of Sonic 3 using the same engine that would be used to remake the other games. The other remakes they made would be in the game,
but any changes made to them were apparently done by Sega and Sonic Team proper. I read this and was terrified that Sega had pulled some bullshit that made those versions worse. And after hearing even more of what it was like for Headcanon to work with Sega and how it was a poorly managed, stress-induced rush fest, I didn't know what to think of this version. The trailers looked good, the new animations were pretty cool, but there was some hesitation when it came to purchasing this. I still got it, though it was more so that Headcanon's work wasn't for nothing, but I don't feel great about giving my money to Sega after all this. Now, with all that in mind, I got the game and I played it, and it's fine. It's Sonic 1, 2, CD, and 3 and Knuckles. Okay, in all fairness, my worries were thankfully subsided once I started playing, and just to clear the air, this is a perfectly fine version to play the classic games on. This isn't anywhere near Color's Ultimate territory. Everything ran well, I never ran into any major bugs or glitches, everything seemed to work here just fine. If anything, there's some really cool stuff in here. The opening animation is fantastic, it really falls in line with the same style Mania Adventures had. Every game received an opening and closing animation, which was really cool. There's a museum area that has a sound test, unlockable cutscenes, including Mania Adventures, some cool artwork. There's a fair amount here. It's not a lot, but you know, it's cool to see. I like the menu setup and how every game is given a full render of the island it takes place on. It's not super fancy, but it's cute and has some fun Easter eggs to find. Mission mode is something that's been added to each game, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't spend much time on this. I really didn't enjoy it that much. From what I played, it was just a couple of weird challenges in each game that you had to beat in a certain amount of time. It's harmless, but I don't see myself completing it anytime soon. It's really only here as a way to get more coins to purchase extras in the museum. Coins are something new added, as in the anniversary mode of each game, there are no lives. Instead of collecting 1-ups or getting an extra life by collecting 100 rings, you get a coin. This could be seen as a way of making death in these games less of a punishment. I see them as harmless. The most intrusive they ever get is that you can use them to retry the special stages. As long as you have the currency to spare, you can try as many times as you'd like. Again, this may neuter the challenge a bit, but you don't have to use them. You can deny it if you so desire. It certainly made things easier for me while playing. I was not in the mood to load up the save file constantly just to try these over and over again. That said, since these games are the remakes from mobile, the special stages are now probably the best they've ever been. The rotation in Sonic 1 is so much smoother, making it easier to make jumps. I've already mentioned that getting the UFOs in Sonic CD is way smoother here, and oh my god, the half pipe is so much better now. I'm still not the biggest fan of these special stages in general, but compared to the original game, these are so much easier on the eyes. Blue Sphere got a bit of an upgrade, but there wasn't that much to improve on anyway. The most that was done here was that the rotation felt a bit smoother while turning. Although this was the only time I noticed a peculiar visual glitch in the game. Whenever you use the gold sphere to launch upwards, Tails doesn't go with you, he just drags his ass across the red spheres. What, do they not count with him? This looks so goofy. The one thing that piqued my interest was the game's story mode, which seemed to have you play through all 4 games back to back. And yeah, it's exactly that, and in my opinion, it's probably the best way to play these games. The order did throw me off a little bit. We start with Sonic 1, then go to CD, and then we play 2. The only reason I say it's weird is because CD is such a graphical upgrade from the first 2 games that going back to 2 afterwards just felt a little strange. In terms of the games themselves, well, it's the mobile remakes now optimized for consoles. The widescreen really does go a long way. I feel like I can see what's coming much easier now. The spin dash has been added to every single game, so now Sonic 1 is paced a little better. Both soundtracks are still available for Sonic CD, and probably the biggest change is that the drop dash from Mania has been added. It's not as good. I don't know if it's something that was just coded wrong or if the collision detection wasn't designed for this move, but you get way less speed and distance out of it here compared to Mania. I mean, it's not an integral thing to have in the game, like I never really used it that much outside of like a select few areas, but at that point it makes me wonder why have it here if it's not going to be that great. Now with that in mind, did my feelings change at all while playing these games in this way? Well, yes and no. I still feel the same about Sonic 1 as I did in my revisit. Having the spin dash here is nice, but it only goes so far with the level design being the way it is. Sonic 2 was still great fun, I really didn't feel any different after playing it here. Sonic CD though, I swear I have a different reaction every time I play it. The first thing that stood out to me was, oh yes, they put the animation back into 4x3. This looks so much better now, and the upscale is really high quality and does wonders for this animation. For this playthrough, I tried to play the games a little differently to how I normally would, just for the sake of variety, but I ended up going back to the basics, except for this game. This time, I tried going after all the robot generators alongside the time stones, and I surprisingly had more fun. Granted, it was made a little easier since the drop dash now allows you to keep your speed, which makes time travel a complete non-issue, regardless of how unintentional this probably was. This run wasn't as fast as I would like it to be, but there was something weirdly relaxing about exploring the levels this way. Not being sure what I was going to find or knowing where the robot generator was really added to the experience. For the first time, I really got a chance to look at the good future versions of every stage, and good lord, they're beautiful. It actually looks like a world. It has some steampunk mixed with nature. I was getting Castle in the Sky vibes looking at some of these stages. It helped too that the Japanese soundtrack was on as well. This version is fantastic and it really fits these levels. And to somewhat retcon something I said in my original review, I thought the American OST was really boring. It's fine, it goes for more of a chill rock vibe, but I'm sorry, it has nothing on the Japanese one. So in general, yeah, I'd say I enjoyed Sonic CD way more on this run than I did previously. I'd still say it's not as good as 2, 3, or Mania, but now I think I can enjoy it on a ground closer to those games. Now we come to the big one. Sonic 3 and Knuckles was the one I was most curious about. Again, this is the first time this game was ever re-released in a quality similar to the other remakes, and I'm happy to say, from my experience anyway, it definitely feels like it's the one that got the most love. There are more little differences in this version compared to any of the others, whether it's more frames of animation in cutscenes or smoothing out certain movements so it feels less jittery. There are so many additions that people have wanted to implement into this game for years. Big Arms is now back as a mid-game boss fight, which is really cool to see, and it gets followed up by an additional cutscene showing the Death Egg fall into Lava Reef. Aside from Sonic CD, this game probably got the best treatment visually. Since the environments always had a ton of detail in them, the jump in quality helps them pop a lot more here. The more I look at this game though, it's kinda clear to me that the basis for this remake came a lot from Sonic 3 Angel Island Revisited, a mod of the game on PC that basically does everything good about this version and even more, including stuff that Sega would never add since it so heavily changes the foundation of the game, like changing the level order back to what it was originally supposed to be, having the ship in Angel Island actually be a threat, customizing the soundtracks. It's a lot of stuff that rearranges the game's code, and I understand why it wouldn't be included. Though I'd say Angel Island Revisited is still the better version of Sonic 3 between these two, as it does have all the advantages that the other one doesn't, and it also doesn't have the biggest weakness of Origins: the music. As I mentioned before, any of the tracks that were speculated to be made by Michael Jackson have been completely removed. Knuckles' original theme and the old Act 1 boss track are completely gone and are replaced with their counterparts from Sonic and Knuckles, which is perfectly fine. That's been the case for the game since '94. But even the level tracks, Carnival Night, Ice Cap, and Launch Base, have been replaced by new versions of their prototype themes. I don't know when I'll ever bring this up again, but the first time players ever got to hear these tracks was in the Sonic & Knuckles collection for PC in 1996. Every song in this version was composed using MIDI files, and they sounded terrible. It sounded like something out of GarageBand. This game is where we first heard the prototype themes, and we wouldn't hear what they originally were supposed to sound like until a few years ago when Sonic 3's real prototype leaked online, and those tracks were there, and they sounded pretty damn good. On original hardware, they sound so much better, and you'd think they just used those. Again, the doctor is available. They did not. They instead had longtime series composer Jun Sonoy remake those tracks. Now, I love this man's music, and his contributions to this series have been nothing short of genius. But they have to stop making him do stuff with Genesis sound. Jun's music always worked best with real instruments. Guitar, bass, drums, as long as he can touch them, he's fine. His ability with synth isn't bad, but I really think he doesn't know how to use the Genesis sound card properly. Granted, not many people did, but the ones who can are still working as musicians, so I don't know why he didn't use them. It's a shame because I actually prefer the prototype version of Carnival Night. The Jackson version has that funky bass and percussion, but it really used too much for me to like it. But Jun's version of this track sounds so depressed. Just listen to them back to back. Ice Cap and Launch Base, to be fair, we're fighting an uphill battle. I'm not a big fan of either prototype track, at least compared to the Jackson versions. Ice Cap sounds like it's trying way too hard to be happy, and Launch Base sounds so boring.
Again, still better than what Origins gave us. And I guess that does bring up my biggest problem with Origins as a whole. The additions that were clearly made by Sega only seem to detract. I know the music thing was something they couldn't win in all fairness, just due to legal reasons. It's stuff that on paper sounds fine, but in practice doesn't seem that thought out or just downright lazy. Like, why is it that for Sonic CD, the new animation abruptly cuts to the old one with no transition? I know I praised keeping the aspect ratio intact, but if you're gonna play a new animation that isn't formatted the same way, the least you could do was have a stylized crop on the side so that it doesn't feel as jarring. Another weird thing is that the credits for each game play as you beat them in story mode, which, if I'm being honest, just kind of feels like an oversight. The whole point of playing in story mode is to play what feels like one continuous journey. And you sit through 4 credit sequences before the ending. I would have preferred if after the final cutscene there was a mega credit scene that combined all of them in a cool way. It's a little thing, but it does detract. I'll preface that having the remakes of all the games would have been enough incentive to purchase it, but if you're going to add stuff, then go all the way with it. Mission mode is cool in concept, but if none of the missions are fun, then why would I do them? Having the drop dash can make playing the games more fun, but if it's more of a hindrance, then why have it at all? And on top of that, I swear something is wrong with the jump in Sonic 1 and 2. If you jump out of a spin dash or a roll, you can't control your jump in midair. You can control your jump fine when you just run and jump, and you can even move when you spin dash jump in CD and 3, so why is it a problem here? And speaking of CD, the game defaults the soundtrack to the American version, and if you play story mode, you can't change it there. You have to exit out, select Sonic CD separately, change the music, and then resume story mode. Why not just have it in the menu? Each game now has a mirror mode. Is that cool? What's so special about this? It's just flipping the game. Anyone can do that. See? Every game has an original mode alongside anniversary mode, the latter being the widescreen remakes and the former presenting the game in its original 4x3 format and including lives. You'd think that these would be the original ROMs of each game for the sake of preservation or as a way for people to play the original games in one package, but it's not. They are just the remakes presented in a 4x3 aspect ratio and have lives. They try to hide it by removing the drop dash in every game, but Sonic 1 still gives you the spin dash. Like, that wasn't in the original game. The special stages are the same updated ones from the remakes, so you can choose what type of spin dash you want in Sonic CD. The remixes are still in Sonic 3. I know it seems trivial to be complaining about this, as these are honest improvements to the game. But with that in mind, why not just play Anniversary Mode? These versions offer nothing of value outside of having a square aspect ratio and lives, which in my opinion is not worth playing a very similar version of the game. I would have much preferred having the original ROMs of each game so that they could have something resembling what's supposed to be the original versions. Hell, CD's original ROM hasn't been released since Sonic Gems Collection back in 2005. That would be cool to see. The original print is really difficult to get nowadays. Again, if this wasn't here, I probably wouldn't be bringing this up, but if the fact they included a mode touted as original mode that was supposed to give you the ability to play these games how they were originally made, leads me to think that these would have been the original versions for people to experience. Is this collection good? When I ask that, I'm referring to the entire package. The widescreen remakes of each game are fantastic. These are probably the best versions of the games to this date. It's clear that Christian Whitehead and Headcanon, just like they did with Sonic Mania, put everything they possibly could into making these versions. The ability to play as Tails and Knuckles in each game, the re-implementation of Hidden Palace Zone in Sonic 2, the fact that 3 and Knuckles was given every ounce of love and care they could, are elements that really shine through. It's just a shame that they're all part of what's an otherwise kind of lame package. If these were not the remakes and were just straight ports of the games alongside everything else included, this would be such a lame buy. Sonic Mega Collection came out in 2002 and is still to this day the best Sonic collection ever made. On top of having all the games in their original forms, there were more games to unlock, a ton of extras that were more than just music and art. They had comic book covers from issues that were released at the time, alongside an in-progress version of Sonic Heroes intro. On top of everything, the presentation was great and it had one of the best damn tracks in the series. But imagine if this collection was just 4 games, some music, and some art. Wouldn't it be kinda lame by comparison? Origins only offers that much content-wise. It's great that we have the remakes of these games, but outside of that, you have an incredibly weak lineup that offers less than a compilation that came out 20 years ago. If you are gonna get this, then do two things. One, wait for a sale. Right now it's going for $40, and that's more than Mania at launch. I'd say 30 or hell even 25 is probably your best maximum to go for. And second, get it on PC. Why? Mods. Literally, the first thing people did when this game came out on Steam was mod the Michael Jackson music back in. That alone is worth getting that version. Plus, considering how much mod support Mania has gotten, it's only a matter of time before we get some really wild stuff here. So, to recap, get Mania Plus. It's fantastic, and approach Origins with caution. It's 4 great games bundled into something that just doesn't do them justice.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it's about all I got. Not gonna lie, I don't really know how to end this. Hold on 1 second, come on. Hey, M.
Yeah.
Am I a loser for liking Sonic?
Yes.
Okay, good to know.